Hello and welcome to the Blitz, the NFL Defense Analysis Podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Josh Shepardson at BChad50. Talking about Week 13 defense options as written up by you, of course. And top one should be no surprise to anyone. We all saw Nick Foles throw a football, kind of like how a grandpa throws a football in the backyard on Thanksgiving. It was awful. Bengals took full advantage. It's hard to believe that the Cardinals won't as well. I mean, game flow kind of dictated that one as well, but hard to think that this one's going to be much different. Obviously, the Rams are at home rather than on the road, but Cardinals just as good of a team, if not better than the Bengals. Tons of players on the defensive end, and the Rams know better than to give Todd Gurley the ball. I think it was 9 times last week. You just keep running because that's your only chance to keep a game close. You run the ball, you get creative, you throw him the ball, do what you got to do, but if Nick Foles is forced to throw the ball a bunch of times again, or Case Keenum is still alive when they put him in there, it doesn't matter. If either one of these guys throwing the ball a ton, the Cardinals have massive upside here.
Yeah, and I mean, Sean Mannion got playing time at quarterback. The rookie got some PT as well. So, I mean, to say that this quarterback situation's up in the air is an understatement, but it doesn't matter who's under center. They don't have a capable NFL starting caliber quarterback on their roster right now. It's the Todd Gurley show, and the bad news for them is the Cardinals have an offense that can put a lot of points between the two of them, and if they're stuck playing catch-up, it's great that you want to establish the run with Todd Gurley and that you want to get your best player of the football, but if you're down 2 scores after the first quarter, it's going to be tough to continue to run the football because you're going to need to have some sense of urgency and play catch-up. Spread's only 5.5 points, but the Cardinals are still the highest scoring team in the league, so I think that they've got a chance to blow by that spread. And again, if they race out to a big lead early and the Rams aren't able to use their best offense, they're really their only offensive steady weapon. I mean, nothing against Tavon Austin, but I won't call him a steady weapon at this point. It's the Todd Gurley show. If they can't turn to Gurley, they're in trouble, and they haven't eclipsed 20 points in a game since week 8, so they are in an absolute tailspin right now. They're turning the ball over a ton, and if they're put in passing situations, expect them to add to that turnover total because that backfield or the defensive backfield for the Cardinals is tremendous. I mean, Tyrann Mathieu and Patrick Peterson are both capable of forcing turnovers, and especially against a below-average quarterback, whoever that is for the Rams this week.
Yeah, like you said, it doesn't matter who it is. It's going to be it's not going to be pretty for the Rams. Next up, the Broncos coming off a great team effort against the Patriots, knocking them off. A lot of it due to the defense. Give Brock Osweiler and C.J. Anderson a little bit of credit there, but mostly the defense. And in my mind, my book, still the top defense in the league, and facing the Chargers team that surprisingly had a good offensive week last week. Certainly not expecting that here. Team with no running game, forced to throw the ball against the best pass defense in the league. Good luck with that, Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take their good game with a grain of salt, too. I definitely touted the Jaguars last week because of the Chargers' struggles, but they are below-average defense, and the fact that Rivers is an elite quarterback basically allowed him to push past the below-average defense, and he's not going to have that luxury this week against the Broncos. They are stingy as hell against the pass. They can get after the pass. They can get after the quarterback. Chargers, because they have passed so much, have allowed quite a few sacks. And the Broncos lead the league in sacks. So really great matchup. I mean, in boxing, they say styles make fights. Well, this is not a style that's going to fit the Chargers this week. When you're pass happy and you're facing the Broncos, even if TJ Ward is out, that's a secondary that you don't want to mess with. And they don't have a receiver that's going to give a guy like Talib or Harris Jr. problems at all. They just don't have the playmakers to really, I can't even say exploit, but even make it competitive in that secondary with the Broncos. So I think this matchup is perfect for Denver.
Yeah. I mean, I love this Denver defense really in any matchup, but this one especially. It's not going to be pretty for Phillip Rivers, and they already kind of ruined their chances at that number 1 pick with a couple of good games recently. But either way, they could quickly be moving their way back towards the top. I guess the flipped over top, the draft pick top. I guess
the process, the Sixers process, basically.
Yeah, the rebuilding mode. Next up, a value play: the Houston Texans, aka J.J. Watt versus the Bills. This is a team that has their defense arguably been the best in football over the past 3 or 4 weeks, shutting down everyone. I mean, some good offenses as well. And, I mean, we saw last week the Saints, a couple weeks ago the Bengals, like two of the better offenses in football just absolutely shut down completely. Not slowed down, stopped. And, I mean, it's scary. There's no offensive lineman in the league that has been able to stop J.J. Watt. And, I mean, I don't know if you saw the picture. There's a still shot of him jumping, trying to knock down a Drew Brees pass, and it looks like he's flying above the defensive line. I mean, the guy is just an absolute monster, and I'll take this defense against any offense in the league right now.
Yeah, right now they are absolutely clicking on all cylinders. They're averaging, allowing less than 9 points per game in their last 4 contests, which is silly. 35 points allowed in that time frame. Only one team has reached double digits in that time frame. They've allowed 6 points to 3 of their opponents, 2 of which you highlighted, the Bengals and the Saints, and both of those teams have explosive offenses, and they just made them look like a pop gun. I mean, it just was ridiculous what J.J. Watt and company have been able to do. They've been soaring up the sack list. They now rank within the top 10 with 29 on the season. They can force turnovers. They're allowing, I mean, their points per game allowed has dropped tremendously since getting the doors blown off of them by the Dolphins in week 7. Since then, they've been a completely different unit. They look unbelievable. And even though they're 3-point underdogs and on the road, J.J. Watt's arguably the most disruptive force on the defensive side of the football. I'm not overly concerned with the spread. And, I mean, as a Bills fan, I've watched Tyrod Taylor get knocked around all season. They're having problems protecting the passer. Part of that's Taylor holding onto the football too long at times and being indecisive. Part of that's the line just not doing their job. But it's not going to matter why he's getting sacked, just that he is getting sacked. And Watt's going to get after him. That front seven's going to get after him pretty good. And a $2,500 on DraftKings, that's a really good value price.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that price is so low with the kind of production they've had recently. But not the first time we've seen that, so that's going to be a situation I'm certainly looking to take advantage of as well. Next up, a team that's kind of in shambles, but facing another team who's also in shambles, coming off of a ridiculous Cleveland Browns type of loss, the way they won last night. But Miami Dolphins against the Ravens, Mr. Pick Six himself, Matt Schaub. We saw the Ravens not give Buck Allen quite as many touches as we had all liked. This is just a bad offense. I mean, they have no offensive weapons, really. And coming off a game where they did score 33 points against the Browns, but, I mean, it's the Browns. So take that with a grain of salt here. And Dolphins have players in the right places. They've struggled as a whole. And Ndamukong Suh, now you see him talking about some reports saying that he thinks some of his teammates don't deserve to play with him because he's too good for him and all kinds of crazy stuff. But, I mean, I would still take the Miami Dolphins defense over the Baltimore Ravens offense. And you got to take a shot to differentiate yourself somewhere.
Yeah, and you point out the 33 points. It's worth noting that 6 of those were on a blocked field goal to end the game, and another 7 were on a punt return for a touchdown, followed up by a PAT. So really the offense was responsible for 20 points last night against a bad Browns team. Matt Schaub delivered on his continued pick six existence. I mean, 5th time in 7 games, I believe, was a statistic I read. This one returned by 85-year-old Carlos Dansby last night. I mean, honestly, he had a chance at a second pick six if the Cleveland defender was able to get to his feet a little bit sooner. He's the same Matt Schaub as we've seen. He wasn't a complete train wreck last night, but he makes bad decisions. He throws to the wrong team, and it's certainly favorable to pick teams against him. I will be picking defenses against the Ravens for the remainder of the season. The Dolphins just happen to be that team that plays them this week. They're 4.5-point favorites. They're at home, and they're cheap on both FanDuel and DraftKings. And as you said, you got to look to differentiate yourself someplace. I think this is a fairly high ceiling group, even if they have been in shambles and were just picked apart by Ryan Fitzpatrick. There just aren't the offensive weapons on the Ravens that Fitzpatrick had to work with on the Jets. So this looks like a plus matchup for the Dolphins. And I mean, there's not much more analysis than that needed. It's a perfect matchup for them.
Yeah, target bad offenses that make mistakes. That's a great way to go with any defense, really.
Yeah.
This one is a very good defense, one of the best in the league, up there with the Broncos. Carolina Panthers at the Saints. We saw J.J. Watt and company shut down the Saints on the road. Obviously, Saints offense, a different kind of animal at home in the Superdome. But This past week, first time, I believe, since 2013, the Saints didn't score a touchdown on offense. Now they get the Panthers. This is a team that's kind of, reeling right now, falling quickly out of any chance of making the playoffs. I'm in a pretty weak NFC right now. But Panthers, undefeated. Maybe this is your spot where you're hoping, if you're a Saints fan, this is the bounce-back game. You're back at home facing a great team. But, I mean, man, that combination of Luke Kuechly, Josh Norman, plenty of other great players as well. I mean, this is a tough Panthers defense, and I'll take a shot with them against just about any team. And this is not an ideal situation for them, but this is an elite unit, though.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the only reason they don't rank as an elite defense over, say, one of the top two teams up there, the Cardinals or the Broncos, is the fact that their floor is lower than that duo because they are facing Drew Brees at home. Brees is just a monster at home. This season, he's got a 115.2 QB rating in 5 games at home. He's averaging over 300 yards passing there. But odds makers don't seem to be deterred from placing the Panthers as a sizable favorite. 7-point favorites this week. Gotta like seeing a team with this kind of defense, with those kind of playmakers, as better than a touchdown favorite. They do it all. They force turnovers. They get sacks. They don't allow a lot of. It's not even a bend but don't break defense. They don't bend. 4.7 yards allowed per play is the second lowest total in the league. They're allowing less than 19 points per game. I mean, there isn't anything this unit can't do. Their ceiling is matched but not exceeded by anybody else in the league. And again, it really just comes down to them being a GPP play based on price. They are kind of pricey. And two, the fact that their floor is a little bit lower than the other top defensive options this week. But ceiling is unrivaled, and that's what you're looking for in GPPs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you can get one like that with the amount of talent they have on their side, I'm absolutely on board with that 100% of the time. Next up, the Bengals against the Browns. That's all you really need to see here is at Browns. We see Josh McCown now hurt once again. We saw Austin Davis come in, who I actually like Austin Davis. I think he's a decent quarterback. But Johnny Manziel, maybe he's never going to get a chance. You see the Browns now signed Terrell Pryor today, maybe to be a wide receiver, maybe to be a quarterback. Who knows at this point? But, I mean, this team's a mess, as they usually are. And, I mean, Bengals dominated them the first time. Now it's at the Browns, so obviously a little bit different of a story than playing at Paul Brown. But this is just not a good situation for the Browns, and I just don't see any way that they do much against this Bengals defense.
Yeah, the thought is that McCown's possibly suffered a broken collarbone. If that's the case, he obviously won't be starting at quarterback. That means it's Austin Davis or Johnny Manziel, and we saw what the Bengals did against Manziel the first time. They held them to just 10 points scored and recorded 3 sacks. They can get after Johnny football. There's no running attack for the Browns whatsoever. They cannot establish the run at all. You become predictable against the Bengals. That's a recipe for disaster for an offense and a recipe for fantasy point scoring for that defense. There isn't a posted line at Pinnacle Sports yet, but there are a few sports books that have the Bengals as a 7-point favorite, so you got to like that. Again, anytime you get a defense that's better than a touchdown favorite, they've got a chance to do some damage. Bengals now lead the league in points allowed per game at just 17.5, so they've been very good. This is kind of a bend but don't break defense, unlike the Panthers. They are allowing 5.5 yards per play, but when it comes down to buckling down and keeping teams out of the end zone, they've done a great job this year. With their 29 sacks, they've been getting after the quarterback, whether it's Manziel or Davis back there. Pocket awareness, not the greatest strength for either, so you'd expect some sacks. And the Browns, they've allowed the most sacks in the league, so certainly plays right into the hands of the Bengals. And they haven't done a good job of taking care of the football either, tying for the 6th most turnovers on the year with 20. So really like the ceiling in this group. And if you like to chase ceiling, but you don't like that floor that the Panthers present, the Bengals certainly have a much higher floor against the Browns than the Panthers do against the Saints. So of the two, I think the Panthers have a slightly higher ceiling, but not much. But if you want to sacrifice a little bit of ceiling and get a higher floor, the Bengals are your way to go.
Yeah, I'm on board with that one. Next up, the Patriots against the Eagles. Obviously, we've got Rob Gronkowski not likely to play. We've already got Deion Lewis out. We've got Julian Edelman out. Everyone else seemingly falling quickly. So Patriots going to need their defense to step up. And, I mean, it's been a good defensive unit this year. And the Eagles, I mean, this team's a mess. They just look like one of the most poorly managed teams. Everyone's talking about Chip Kelly's on his way out. He's lost the locker room. And whenever you get a situation like that, you want to pounce, especially with number one team in the AFC, coming off their first loss. They need the defense to play well, and I just don't see any way that the Eagles have a lot of success against this defense this week.
I don't either, and they're traveling to Foxborough to play the Patriots, which is bad news for them. Pinnacle didn't have a spread up, but number of other outlets had them as double-digit favorites at -10. I mean, they're the biggest betting favorites of the week. You certainly like to jump on a home defense that's the biggest betting favorite. You can pretty much chalk them up to being in this article every week because, and I don't mean the Patriots, but whoever that defense is, because that's just a perfect game flow situation for a defense racking up points. That's the case for the Patriots. The Patriots do a good job of getting after the quarterback, and whether it's Bradford or Sanchez sitting back there, they're likely to be a sitting duck playing from behind and having to throw the football. So really like the sack potential for the Patriots. Don't force a lot of turnovers, which does hurt their ceiling just a little bit, but all those sacks certainly is nice, and the fact that they're allowing less than 20 points per game is also quite the feather in their cap as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then last one up here, opponent being the key here.
Yep.
And, the fact there's no ats. Washington's played very well at home. Kirk Cousins has played very well at home. Whether you like that or not, that's just what he does. And the Cowboys now with Tony Romo, I mean, I don't know how many collarbones this guy has, but he's just, I think it was the same one actually, just breaking. I mean, it's unfortunate. Their season's been riddled with injuries, but despite the fact they're not actually eliminated from the playoffs yet because the NFC and NFC East in particular is just that god-awful this year, but I just don't see, and it's another offense that's just so bad. You got Matt Castle now there. Darren McFadden's been good. Des Bryant hasn't really produced. I mean, it wasn't really his fault last week with Tony Romo, but Matt Castle's a bad quarterback. There's a reason why this guy wasn't a starter in the NFL, and I mean, really the only chance that this Cowboys team has is establish the run, and Des Bryant makes some plays, but I just don't have any faith in Matt Castle getting the ball to Des Bryant for him to make plays.
Nope, and like we talked about with picking on Matt Schaub and the Ravens, you pick on below NFL starting caliber quarterbacks when you can, and that's what Matt Castle is. He's not an NFL caliber starting quarterback at this point in his career, and the Redskins, they are below average in pretty much every defensive measure save for being slightly above average in turnovers forced. It's not a great unit, but they're at home. Kirk Cousins has played lights out at home. He's capable of getting them a lead, and you put them in the lead and force Matt Castle to throw the ball, abandon the run with Darren McFadden, and good things can happen, and they're cheap. $2,300 on DraftKings, $4,400 on FanDuel. This is another case of pick on the bad offense with a defense that maybe is below average, but this is a quarterback-driven league, and if you don't have a quarterback who can throw the ball down the field and do things for the offense, you're not going to do anything at all. And that was the Cowboys' problem with Brandon Whedon under center. That was their problem with Matt Castle under center. They just have not been a good offense this year because they cannot pass the football. So I'm all over the Redskins this week as a value play. And though I like that, prefer them in GPPs as a value play to cash games. If I'm going to go with the cash games, cheap defense is going to be one of the other value plays highlighted.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're more GPP there for me as well. But either way, those are some defenses for you to consider this week. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.